There's a Yiddish word, chutzpah. And that truly is chutzpah. How dare we lie and cover up what we all knew? You know what? Not a single Democrat is here today because not a single one of them gives a damn about the fact that they lied to the American people for 4 years. They knew. Every one of them knew that Joe Biden was mentally not competent to do the job. The White House press secretary, she knew when she stood in front of the American people and lied over and over and over again. And they're not here because they can't defend themselves. It wasn't a surprise. For 4 years, the White House hid President Biden from Republican senators, would not let him meet with us. He served 40 years in this body. We all know him. And they deliberately lied. And by the way, Jake Tapper had a bombshell book exposing the incredible scandal that Biden's mental decline was covered up by Jake Tapper.
Hello, Patriots. Welcome back to Signal 76, where we cut through the mainstream media lies and deliver the unvarnished truth that every freedom-loving American needs to hear. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into what may be the most explosive testimony ever delivered in the halls of Congress. Senator Ted Cruz just delivered a constitutional earthquake that should have every patriot's blood boiling and every Democrat running for cover. If you're new to this channel, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're the only source brave enough to tell you what's really happening in Washington while the corrupt media covers it up. Smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and stick around until the very end, because what I'm about to reveal will fundamentally change how you view the last 4 years of American government.
Thank you. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Biden administration may go down in history as the most brazen constitutional fraud in American history. A Potemkin presidency fronted by a failing puppet with staffers behind the scenes pulling the strings. This is not political hyperbole. The American people saw it with their own eyes during the June 2024 debate. Numerous times, Biden stood frozen behind the podium, mouth agape, eyes frozen and unblinking. When he did speak, his words were confused and disjointed. I said that night, this is the most consequential presidential debate in history because it will result in one of the two candidates being removed from the ballot. That was exactly right. And following that debate, the Democrats recognized the collapse. They pulled out their knives and took out President Biden like Caesar on the Ides of March. For all of their strutting about, protesting that they support democracy, not a one of them gave a damn about democracy when they pulled Biden off the ballot and dropped Kamala Harris in without a single Democrat primary voter voting for him. And you know what? Not a single Democrat is here today because not a single one of them gives a damn about the fact that they lied to the American people for 4 years. They knew. Every one of them knew that Joe Biden was mentally not competent to do the job. The White House press secretary, she knew when she stood in front of the American people and lied over and over and over again. And they're not here because they can't defend themselves. It wasn't a surprise. For 4 years, the White House hid President Biden from Republican senators, would not let him meet with us. He served 40 years in this body. We all know him. And they deliberately lied. And by the way, Jake Tapper had a bombshell book exposing the incredible scandal that Biden's mental decline was covered up by Jake Tapper. There's a Yiddish word, chutzpah. And that truly is chutzpah. How dare we lie and cover up what we all knew? Now, I have been asked literally 1,000 times by Texans, who was running the country? And I'm going to give you the most terrifying answer. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And not a single Democrat here cares. The most telling proof of Biden's decline came with the signature of the president, the symbol of executive authority that was outsourced to a machine. Mr. Wold, you're a lawyer who served in the White House counsel's office. You understand the gravity of presidential action. Does the president's signature carry legal and constitutional weight under Article 2?
Yes.
Is the act of signing an executive order or signing a law or granting a pardon a delegable duty of the president?
So in that opinion in 2005 from OLC, they said essentially that an Autopen could be used by a subordinate, but the president's determination as to sign the document can never be delegated.
Can that authority be transferred to a staffer or machine without the president's explicit authorization?
Never.
And if you look at the statistics are stunning. In 2021, President Biden issued 78 executive orders. None were signed with an Autopen. That first year of the presidency, Biden, I suppose, was relatively lucid, and 78 executive orders he signed by hand. The second year, however, we see the Autopen emerge. The first Autopen executive order was issued on July 15th, 2022. After that day, 100% of the executive orders issued in 2022 were signed by an Autopen. In 2023, Biden issued 24 executive orders. 16 were Autopenned. In 2024, Biden issued 19. 14 were Autopenned. In 2025, Biden issued 14 executive orders. Every single one was Autopenned. Mr. Wald, let me ask you as a legal matter, if there's a law that's passed both houses of Congress and it goes to the White House, and a staffer autopens signing that law without the president's authorization, is that law legally passed and signed into law?
No.
If an executive order is issued and a staffer autopens it without the president's authorization, is that executive order legally binding?
No.
And if a pardon is issued from the President of the United States and a staffer autopens it without the President's authorization, is that pardon legally binding?
No.
Under the Biden White House, the ceremonial song, Hail to the Chief, was effectively replaced with Hail to the Pen. And it was an outright assault on democracy. And every reporter covering this ought to ask, why doesn't a Democrat care? We heard about the moral responsibilities of a staffer. How about an elected senator who knows damn well that if we get into a war and Iran is preparing to fire a nuclear weapon at the United States, that the commander-in-chief is busy playing with his Jello and is not competent to defend ourselves? And every member of the cabinet, the chief of staff, the press secretary, and the members of Congress who lied about this on a daily basis with the press's complicity, they are all responsible for subverting democracy.
Senator Cornyn.
This isn't just political theater, folks. This is about the very foundation of our republic being systematically dismantled by puppet masters operating in the shadows. What we witnessed from Senator Cruz wasn't just another political speech. It was a declaration of war against the greatest constitutional crisis in American history. For 4 long years, while real Americans struggled under crushing inflation, watched our borders get overrun, and saw our military humiliated in Afghanistan, we were being governed not by the president we elected, but by a shadowy cabal of unelected bureaucrats pulling the strings of a mentally incompetent figurehead. Think about that for a moment, patriots. Every executive order that destroyed American energy independence, every decision that weakened our military, every policy that sold out American workers to China, none of it came from Joe Biden. It came from the puppet masters hiding behind the curtain while they propped up their failing marionette for the cameras. Senator Cruz laid out the most damning evidence we've ever seen of this constitutional fraud. Remember that debate in June 2024? We all watched in horror as Biden stood frozen like a deer in headlights, mouth hanging open, eyes vacant and unblinking. The mainstream media tried to spin it as a bad night, but we knew better. That wasn't just an off night. That was the mask finally slipping, revealing the cognitive wasteland that had been hidden from the American people for years. But here's what really burns my blood, patriots. Every single Democrat knew. Every single one of them. They sat in their committee hearings, they appeared on television, they gave speeches on the Senate floor, all while knowing that the man they were covering for couldn't string together a coherent sentence. The White House press secretary stood at that podium day after day, looking the American people in the eye and lying through her teeth about Biden's mental fitness. This wasn't incompetence, folks. This was deliberate deception on a scale that would make Watergate look like a parking ticket. They knew Biden was mentally gone, and they used that to their advantage. While he was supposedly running the country, they were the ones actually making the decisions, bypassing the Constitution, bypassing the will of the American people, and installing their radical agenda through the back door. And when it became impossible to hide anymore, when even their media allies couldn't cover for Biden's obvious decline, what did they do? Did they respect democracy? Did they hold primaries? Did they let the American people choose their nominee? Hell no. They pulled out their political knives and stabbed Biden in the back like Caesar on the Ides of March, then installed Kamala Harris without a single primary vote cast in her favor. This is the party that lectures us about democracy, patriots. This is the party that spent 4 years screaming about threats to our institutions while they were literally puppeteering a mentally incompetent president and subverting the will of the voters. The hypocrisy is so thick you could cut it with a knife. But Senator Cruz didn't just expose their lies about Biden's mental state. He revealed something even more terrifying. He showed us the statistics that prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that Biden wasn't even signing his own executive orders. In 2021, when Biden still had some cognitive function left, he signed 78 executive orders by hand. Every single one. But as his mental decline accelerated, the Autopen took over. By 2022, after July 15th, 100% of executive orders were signed by a machine. 100% patriots. Not by the president, not by the man the American people elected, but by a machine operated by unelected staffers. In 2023, 16 out of 24 executive orders were auto-penned. In 2024, 14 out of 19. And in 2025, every single executive order was signed by machine. Do you understand what that means? It means that for the better part of 4 years, we didn't have a president. We had a rubber stamp operated by deep state operatives who were implementing their agenda while the American people thought they were getting the policies of the man they elected. This isn't just fraud, patriots. This is treason. Senator Cruz asked the legal expert a simple question. If a law passed by Congress is signed by a staffer using an autopen without the president's authorization, is that law legally binding? The answer was no. If an executive order is autopenned by a staffer without presidential authorization, is it legally binding? No. If a presidential pardon is autopenned without authorization, is it legally binding? No. Think about the implications of that, patriots. How many laws, how many executive orders, how many pardons issued during the Biden administration are now legally questionable because they weren't actually signed by the president? How many policies that damaged American interests, that weakened our economy, that compromised our national security were implemented without proper constitutional authority? This goes beyond political disagreement. This strikes at the very heart of our constitutional system. Article 2 of the Constitution vests executive power in the president, not in his staff, not in a machine, not in whoever happens to be pulling the strings behind the scenes. When those powers are exercised without the president's direct authorization, it's not just improper, it's unconstitutional. Senator Cruz posed the most terrifying question any American can ask. Who was running the country? And his answer should chill every patriot to the bone. He doesn't know. A sitting United States senator, a man with access to the highest levels of government, genuinely doesn't know who was making the decisions that affected 330 million Americans. That's not a political talking point, patriots. That's a national security crisis of unprecedented proportions. While Biden was, in Cruz's words, playing with his Jello, who was making decisions about nuclear weapons, who was commanding our military, who was negotiating with foreign adversaries. We literally don't know, and that should terrify every American regardless of political party. But here's what makes this even worse. Not a single Democrat showed up to defend their actions. Not one. They knew they couldn't justify what they'd done, so they ran away like cowards rather than face the music. They spent 4 years lecturing Republicans about constitutional norms and democratic principles, but when confronted with evidence of their own constitutional violations, they were nowhere to be found. This cowardice tells us everything we need to know about the modern Democratic Party. They're perfectly willing to weaponize government institutions against their political opponents, perfectly willing to lie to the American people about fundamental issues of governance. But when it comes time to answer for their actions, they disappear faster than Biden's cognitive abilities. The implications of this testimony extend far beyond the Biden administration. If unelected staffers can effectively run the executive branch through a mentally incompetent figurehead, what's to stop them from doing it again? What's to stop future administrations from installing their own puppet presidents while the real power lies with shadowy advisors operating behind the scenes? This is why the 2024 election was so crucial, patriots. It wasn't just about choosing between two candidates or two parties. It It was about whether we would continue to be governed by the Constitution or by an unelected deep state operating through constitutional fraud. The American people saw through the lies, saw through the media cover-up, and chose to restore legitimate constitutional government. But our work isn't done. Everyone who participated in this cover-up, everyone who lied to the American people, everyone who enabled this constitutional fraud needs to be held accountable. The White House press secretary who lied from the podium daily, the cabinet members who participated in the charade, the congressional Democrats who covered for Biden's obvious decline, the media figures who attacked anyone who dared to question Biden's mental fitness. Senator Cruz called out Jake Tapper specifically for writing a book exposing Biden's mental decline after spending years attacking anyone who raised those same concerns. That's the kind of journalistic malpractice that has destroyed trust in American media. They knew the truth, they had the evidence, but they chose to cover it up until it became politically convenient to reveal it. This is about more than just political accountability, patriots. This is about the integrity of our entire system of government. If the American people can't trust that the person they elect to the presidency is actually making presidential decisions, then democracy itself becomes a meaningless facade. The statistics Senator Cruz presented paint a picture of systematic deception that goes to the very heart of our constitutional order. When the president's signature, the most basic symbol of executive authority, is outsourced to a machine operated by unelected staff, we're no longer operating under the Constitution. We're operating under a system where real power lies with whoever happens to control the machinery of government. This is exactly what the founders feared when they designed our system of checks and balances. They understood that power concentrated in the hands of unelected officials was the greatest threat to liberty. They created a system where executive power would be vested in a single, accountable individual who would answer directly to the American people. What we saw under the Biden administration was the complete subversion of that system. Instead of one person exercising executive authority and being held accountable for those decisions, we had a shadow government of unelected officials making decisions while hiding behind a mentally incompetent figurehead. The damage done by this constitutional fraud extends far beyond domestic policy. Our foreign adversaries watched the same debate we did. They saw the same cognitive decline. They knew they were dealing with a puppet rather than a president. How many international crises could have been avoided if other world leaders knew they were dealing with someone who actually had the mental capacity to make decisions? China's aggressive expansion in the South China Sea, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Iran's escalating proxy wars across the Middle East. All of these crises unfolded while America was led by someone who wasn't mentally capable of providing strong leadership. Our enemies saw weakness and acted accordingly, while our allies questioned whether they could rely on American commitments. Senator Cruz's testimony reveals that the damage goes even deeper than we imagined. It's not just that Biden was mentally incompetent. It's that his staff was actively usurping presidential authority while covering up his condition. Every major decision, every executive order, every policy initiative was being made by people who were never elected to make those decisions. This is why transparency matters, patriots. This is why the media's role as watchdog is so crucial. But instead of fulfilling their constitutional duty to inform the American people, they became active participants in the cover-up. They attacked anyone who raised questions about Biden's mental fitness. They dismissed obvious signs of cognitive decline as partisan attacks. They became propaganda ministers for an administration that was lying to the American people about the most fundamental question of governance. The American people deserve better. They deserve to know who is actually making the decisions that affected their lives. They deserved honest reporting about the president's mental state. They deserved a government that operated within constitutional bounds rather than through shadowy puppet masters pulling strings behind the scenes. What Senator Cruz exposed today isn't just a political scandal. It's a constitutional crisis that threatens the very foundation of American democracy. When executive power can be exercised by unelected staff through an Autopen signature, we're no longer a republic governed by the rule of law. We're something else entirely, something our founders would have recognized as tyranny. The question now is what we do about it. How do we ensure that this kind of constitutional fraud never happens again? How do we hold accountable those who participated in this deception? How do we restore faith in American institutions that have been so thoroughly corrupted? The answers won't be easy, patriots, but they start with the kind of courage Senator Cruz showed today. It takes guts to stand up in front of the United States Senate and call out this level of corruption. It takes backbone to demand accountability when the entire establishment wants to move on and pretend nothing happened. We need more leaders like Ted Cruz who are willing to ask the hard questions and demand real answers. We need journalists who prioritize truth over political convenience. We need citizens who stay engaged and hold their representatives accountable. Most importantly, we need to remember that our Constitution isn't just a piece of paper. It's the foundation of our liberty, and when it's violated, we all suffer the consequences. The testimony we heard today should be a wake-up call for every American who believes in constitutional government. The Biden administration's use of Autopens to sign executive orders without proper authorization represents a fundamental violation of Article 2 of the Constitution. The cover-up of Biden's mental decline represents a betrayal of the American people's trust. The installation of Kamala Harris without primary elections represents a subversion of democratic principles. But most importantly, the refusal of Democrats to show up and defend their actions represents an admission of guilt. They know they can't justify what they did, so they're hoping we'll all just forget about it and move on. That's not going to happen. Patriots. The American people have long memories, and we don't forget when our Constitution is trampled underfoot by power-hungry politicians and their enablers in the media. This is our moment to demand accountability. This is our moment to ensure that everyone who participated in this constitutional fraud faces consequences for their actions. This is our moment to restore integrity to American government and ensure that future administrations operate within constitutional bounds. The stakes couldn't be higher, patriots. If we allow this kind of behavior to go unpunished, we're essentially giving future administrations permission to govern through shadow presidents and puppet masters. We're saying that the Constitution is optional, that transparency is negotiable, and that the American people don't deserve to know who's actually running their government. That's not the America our founders envisioned. That's not the America our veterans fought and died to defend. That's not the America we're going to leave to our children and grandchildren. We're going to fight for constitutional government, for transparency, for accountability, and for the kind of leadership that puts America first. Senator Cruz's testimony today was just the beginning. The American people deserve a full investigation into who was actually making decisions during the Biden administration. They deserve to know which executive orders were properly authorized and which were signed by machines operated by unelected staff. They deserve accountability for everyone who participated in covering up Biden's mental decline. Most importantly, they deserve a government that operates within constitutional bounds, with leaders who are mentally capable of exercising the awesome responsibilities entrusted to them by the American people. That's not too much to ask. That's the bare minimum we should expect from our government. The fight for constitutional accountability starts now, patriots. It starts with sharing this video, commenting below with your thoughts, and making sure every American knows what really happened during the Biden administration. It starts with demanding that your representatives in Congress support full investigations into this constitutional fraud. It starts with never forgetting that freedom isn't free, and that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Thanks for watching Signal 76, where we never back down from the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it makes the establishment. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share this video with every patriot who needs to know what really happened. The mainstream media won't tell you this story, so it's up to us to spread the word. Until next time, keep fighting for America, keep defending the Constitution, and never let them silence the voice of the people.